Hi friends! So today we're painting this. It's this fun little implied, owl. And then these little implied tree branches, some leaves. This is intuitive, so you'll get to see my process and understand how I have no idea what I'm doing until midway through. So to paint that with me, you will need your standard black. I didn't really use white on that one, but my white is the Celadon tan. It's fairly opaque. We have turquoise. Again, this is one of the high flow fluid liquid acrylics. We have my Teal-Blue Lagoon, yellow Oxide, Magenta, and brush-wise, we have fan brush, our 1/2 inch angled, 1/4 inch flat angle brush, my what I call pointy brush. You'll see it's just a very thin, fine tip brush that's great for detail work. You will need water, a glass for water, some paper towels. I'm just walking you through my process, and you can paint along with me if you'd like. Otherwise, just watch and enjoy, and maybe it'll help you realize you can totally do this, and it's not hard, and it's not scary, and it's just beautiful and fun. So I have this fan brush, and I'm just making loops out. I enjoy these because I've mixed my liquid teal over here and my blue. And black apparently, because that has just decided to move over to the tan part. I enjoy the fan brushes. Mine is actually kind of wrecked. That's why it's not supposed to have big gaps in it like that. That's just me not taking care of my brushes. But I kind of like it though, because it makes these more defined lines that I really enjoy. So all I did was I added some more color here and then worked it out and just kind of let it blend. That's kind of pretty just how it is. All right, now I'm going to take some white, and I'm mixing it with tan. And I'm just adding some of it into these bigger areas here. Now, it's doing this because it's still pretty wet. So because the surrounding paint is wet, it kind of invades the white with color. Invade is probably a little more aggressive than I needed to call it, but it's a very fun look to me because it gives you these really interesting textures and details that I couldn't create with a brush. I mean intentionally. I'm going to bring in some of my magenta. It's also another one of those that is very liquidy and fluid. And so that is a risk sometimes if you have an uneven palette, that the paint will kind of drip down and end up making more friends, which is very sweet but not convenient for color consistency. So I've added some of the magenta here in this kind of middle white patch. And I got rid of most of the paint that was on my brush originally. And I'm just bringing it up with water. And by doing that, I can have this meet from this side. It gives you that variation in color from the dark to the lighter. And this is just me tilting the canvas around. So it's gonna do whatever it does. And yours will do whatever it wants to do. So we all are making completely unique pieces. We're just doing it together. All right, I think this is, I have the yellow ochre. This just gets off the excess water, but sometimes I take off a little too much and then defeated the purpose. And so now that this is meeting that wet edges with the blue, it'll blend them together a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to let this layer dry completely, because if I were to add a second layer onto this, it would just keep blending with the wet paint, as you can see. So I'm gonna let that hang out and we will revisit it in a moment, but it'll be no time for you. All right, so this one is fairly dry. A good way of checking, there we go. If you angle it different ways with a light, you can see where the reflective surfaces are. And as long as you're using a paint that's fairly matte, as in it doesn't dry shiny, you can tell what's still wet and what's dry. So it's not entirely dry, but that's okay. We're gonna get started anyway. So I'm bringing in some more of the yellow ochre that was here originally with just a hint of black in it. And I mixed some of the blue, the light blue, with the magenta. And I'm just going to make some different brush shapes. So all I'm doing, since it's an angled brush, you can change the way you're tilting it as you go, which means you can start with very big curvy shapes like this and then go into very thin shapes. I just really enjoy these, so that. So it's kind of getting dry here, my brushes. So when I'm dabbing it like this, it's just because if you've ever had it where you're going to paint and then you just get this big drip of water, right? You know, right where you're trying to do something more fine, you avoid that by dabbing it on the paper towel. So now I'm bringing in some of the tan. And by just putting it on one edge, there we go. Again, we get natural variation. So that's another little cheat way of implying a light source, or just making something look a little more three-dimensional, or just kind of emphasizing an implied edge. It works for that too, so. Play around with it. Do what feels fun for you. So I'm really liking the tan and that purple there. I think that, sorry, trying to stop it from tapping the desk every time I brush the canvas. Now, since I'm adding in new colors as I go, that gives us automatic color variation through these boxes. If you don't want that to happen, just keep using one color. So this is teal mixed with a little bit of black. And some tan. And since that tan is more opaque, it's the Titian Green Pale. I find I really like this color, even though it's kind of boring. I end up using it quite a bit. I shouldn't say it's boring. It's boring. No one's like, what's your favorite color? Oh, it's Titian Pale Green. Okay. So I went along the border where these two colors met, and I put down fairly large globs in the middle here, and again it did that same thing where it did with the white, where because this is a thicker consistency paint and this is much more fluid paint, but it's also very saturated with water, that they automatically kind of play with each other in that interesting textural way. All right, I'm going to bring in, so it's black with a little bit of magenta, and what that gives me is this very rich, kind of a gray violet color. And I'm just making my little wiggles. There, when I was a kid, there was Ariel the Little Mermaid, and she gave up her voice, and the Sea Witch turned all the people that, you know, failed at whatever into these little green sea creatures that looked very sad at the floor of the, you know, the floor of her sea hideaway. And that's what those remind me of. So I just brought in magenta with a little bit of black. So it's much lighter. You can tell there's, you know, just more magenta in it. What I'm doing now is just filling in some spaces. It is providing texture, some different line movements that might, you know, be fun to use in something later. And if there's some part of it that when you're reaching about this point you really, really like, work around it. You know, you'll figure out what it is later. But if you like it, you know, if you really like it, keep it. This is fun. I have no idea what this will be, but I'm enjoying it. All right, let's let this dry. All right, so we're back. This is now dry, so I'm bringing in some different colors. We have this Blick matte, it's new. Deep red. This is pale purple. Oh, amethyst, but it's going to be pale purple. Purple madder. I really like these Blick ones. They're fairly inexpensive and they're pretty good quality. I really enjoy the texture of them. Oh, that one's just as I say that, that's a weird kind of gelatiny texture that actually isn't great. So you kind of pick up and learn these things as you go. We'll add the magenta that I like. And Celadon. That's what I've decided to pronounce it as. Okay, so here we are. You can see what parts are speaking to you, what seems fun, what you like to keep, what doesn't really work for you. I'm really enjoying this whole section here. I'm not as attached to that part. A big thing to keep in mind is just to be okay with covering up parts that you painted. That's just part of the process. Because we're focusing on enjoying the painting and not really what it'll turn into, it allows a lot of freedom. So it's okay to let things go. So I'm mixing my magenta and my tan. It's giving me this nice lighter pink. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to just add some lines along that curve. And getting the excess water off my brush. Pulling that out. I'm using my fluid black with the 1/4 inch flat angle brush. And what I'm doing is just outlining, but very broadly, so not exactly along the lines, but I'm outlining these. And then if we go down the center, it becomes a little bit of nature. And my lines vary in size. You know, you can be very particular and even, or you can just be messy. It's all the same. It's all art. Once you realize there's no wrong way to do it, it's very freeing. All right, so we have some fun leaves there. And right here, I'm just moving the canvas a bit because I'm trying to figure out what I see in it, if I see anything at all. If something maybe looks like a flower or an animal or a face, just kind of whatever jumps out to me. All right, so we're going to take our black again and do just a little kind of dip. A half oval, basically. And then we will curve it around here so that it touches. And we're just pulling the color back, picking up some of the black, bringing it over. Then over here, we're going to bring it down the side as well. The pink is still a little wet, so it's going to blend, but I'm also bringing some in. And then we'll make just a little V. All right, we'll take the back end of one of the thicker brushes, and we'll go like this with two little dots. And you can actually pick the paint out of it because they're so wet. And so when you do that, you can make a circle around it. We're just using the pointed brush. Circle. And my lovely little oval shape that I use all the time. So many things just can be ovals. And we'll go little guys, just little round forms right here. That'll be his little toes. Okay, we will so now I'm just taking a part that I kind of like to circle. And I'm bringing the translucent turquoise around it. Just letting it mix. If you want to make it a crescent moon, you can do that. Or I'm taking some black and And then it's a crescent moon. And I'm just letting this be almost scribbly. I'm bringing the brush in all different directions. And it makes that messier style. All right. We'll finish up his little branches, and I think we're almost done. So I'm taking some of my tan, and again, it's my 1/4 inch brush. I want the paint to be, oh, I got some magenta on there. So you want the paint to be on the brush, but not super drippy. But, you know, there's a decent amount there. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of press it down. And again, we're using it like a little stamp. My little pointed one. Bring in my magenta. And I'm just adding a bit of color there on those little implied feathers. Again, you can imply a lot by just using shapes that people automatically recognize. All right, I'm taking some of the turquoise and I'm mixing it with that tan, and then I'm pulling in some black. So why I'm doing that is that the black is fairly translucent, as you can see, and I want it to be more rich and opaque. So I'm using the opacity of the tan, and then I'm using some of the teal to bring in more of a navy, a darker blue shade. So it's a really deep slate gray. That deep, sort of a steel gray. And there's this line that the little feet are on. And what I'm going to do is just extend that out. And if I want to blend these together, I can put some black here and bring some black in here. And that'll help these colors. All right. Sorry, my chair is, there we go. So I'm just going slightly parallel to that. And then another one that's a little bit parallel to those. And what I'm doing is I'm using the negative space to make sort of a tree branch. So you can see how it's kind of implied that he's like on this little tree branch. So there we go. One quick trick, assuming it's dry enough, you can add a hint of white on the pupils, and then he has a little more personality. He looks a little more alive. I hope you enjoyed my process. I didn't know what it was going to be. Definitely didn't expect owl. I was thinking a flower. So, you know, it's always a surprise. Thanks for intuitively painting with me, and I hope you join me again.